Hey everybody, how are we doing? This is Nick Dettmann here. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast here where we talk about social media trends, social media marketing trends, digital marketing, website design, search engine optimization, things that can help you with your social media campaigns as well as your digital and website performance. So another good episode lined up for you here. Got some key things to talk about. If you haven't already, though, here's my little plug. Here's I'd like you to subscribe to my blog if you haven't already, and that is nicholasdettman.blogspot.com. There you'll get daily updates on the latest trends, tips, and so forth regarding social media trends, social media topics, marketing strategy tips, things like that. So if you haven't already, please shoot on over to nicholasdettman.blogspot.com and subscribe. Again, you get daily updates and then on top of what we talk about here on the podcast. So, like I said, we've got a lot of things to cover here, some big things to cover today. So let's just dive right into it. So according to Social Media Today, I just got this article very recently. There is concern possibly brewing for Facebook. As we know, the social media giant who's been around since 2003, 2004 has really been the dominant force in terms of social media marketing, really kind of laid the blueprint of what we know of social media and social media today. So recently, Facebook released its annual performance update, and it looks at things by quarter and a lot of things that it takes into note. One of the first things that it takes into note are the monthly and daily active users to their platform. So according to the report, and then also what was also reported by Social Media Today, is that the Facebook showed a 299 million more active users increase over the course of 2020 compared to 2019. But one of the concerning spots has to go circling right at daily active users, and specifically the ones in the United States and Canada. Over the last couple quarters, performance and active visits by users on Facebook here in the United States and Canada is going down. In the second quarter of 2020, on average, about 198 million Americans and Canadians daily visited Facebook daily on the social media platform. In quarter three, that dropped by 2 million users down to 196 million, and that number continued to go down by 1 million to 195 million for the fourth quarter. So to summarize, in a span of 2 quarters or 6 months, so we're looking at the end of June of 2020 into the end of 2020 and December of 2020, again 6-month period, Facebook saw a decrease of daily active users of 3 million people in the United States and Canada. That may not sound like a lot, but that could start raising a little flag. I guess you could say you've heard the expression the red flag. This might be waving the yellow flag. Might be a caution thing that us as marketers need to pay attention to and see if this is a trend that continues. Some things to keep in mind that could possibly be driving this. At the end of the second quarter in 2020, we're looking at the end of June and early July. By then, we're 3-4 months into the COVID-19 pandemic. Racial and social injustice events and so forth are at their peak. I mean, at that point, the end of June 2020, it's only 1 month removed since the George Floyd event in Minneapolis. And then also going into July of 2020 and into August, the presidential elections really starts to heat up in terms of advertising and coverage of the events. The debates obviously come later toward the end of the third quarter, but advertising certainly ramps up, campaign stops ramp up. So those are certainly elements that you could probably circle as reasons for that drop. So that's why it's it's why we only put the caution flag out and not the red flag. Like, oh my gosh, we need to panic. So it's not quite time to panic, but it's certainly a trend we need to pay attention to, because as social media continues to evolve and improve and so forth, uh, Facebook is seen as is the giant and kind of the leader in this, but it's also the platform that's starting to show the significant decreases in downloads or specifically active visits. So, in summary, what Facebook is reporting is that while the active users are going up, which especially among baby boomers, the daily usage is going down. So people are signing up or using it, but they're not using it every day like they used to. Going back to the peak of this was in quarter 2 of 2020. Going back to the fourth quarter of 2018, 186 million daily active users were on Facebook. That number grew by 12 million to 198 million in quarter 2 of 2020. There was a steady increase per quarter during that span, but now the last 2 quarters, Facebook is showing that their daily active user rates are going down. So again, so just something to kind of keep in mind as we keep going forward into 2021 and how we coordinate our content strategies and specifically our social media strategies. Another thing Facebook did was they showcased kind of how their algorithms work to an extent. This is a little unusual. I wouldn't say unusual, but this is certainly, I think it's a little unprecedented for Facebook to be kind of a little transparent about it. I mean, they didn't really reveal too much about exactly how things work with their algorithms and how news feeds and posts come up in people's timelines, but it certainly they put a spotlight on it for a little bit and let you kind of see how it works without revealing too much, and it's quite fascinating. And the whole story about it is on my blog, so be sure like I said, if you don't subscribe to it, head on over to it and check it out. But for our longtime users on Facebook and social media in general, Facebook really was lined up. How posts would be seen on people's timelines was posted chronologically, and really only time posts were made were by people. At that time, when really in the early days of Facebook, businesses didn't have Facebook. That was just something that kind of evolved as time went on and as the popularity in Facebook grew. That's when businesses and news stations and news outlets and all sorts of things that now we kind of, the way we see Facebook today, kind of grew into. So, and that was the way Facebook felt that was the best way to keep this organized, was to set algorithms or math equations to decipher how people looked at what they were looking at and what they wanted to look at, as opposed to just the scrolling that you kind of had with when you're looking through a chronological order, which is again what Facebook was like much in the early days of the platform in the early 2000s. Now, as the platform obviously grew, its popularity grew, the content became more abundant, and people were finding it harder and harder to find what they were looking for or find anything that had relevance. So Facebook decided to create algorithms to help people find what they're looking for sooner. So this move here by Facebook and showing off a little transparency is a little, like I said, a little unprecedented, but it's really kind of neat of them for to do that. But as you might kind of imagine, it really kind of fits into what we would thought of anyways, based on what we've done in research and reading as well. And it's the same for what I've seen. It really kind of just depends on how people interact with certain posts and how their friends interact with posts. So I'm not going to get into too much of the technical mumbo jumbo, because that's a little bit more than what I'm used to. But yeah, so I have a couple of links on my blog that really kind of lets you dive into how the Facebook algorithm works and how they plan to compute, and it's really kind of fascinating to look at it. So I was quite enlightened to see it. So if you haven't got a chance to take a look at it, head on over to my blog, and I've got it there. So, and the last part we'll talk about is this organization, this company called App Annie, released a report recently, 55 pages worth, which is a lot to read, by the way. And I did read, I'll admit, I've read about 30 pages of it. So I still have not gotten all the way through, but I've gotten enough to the point where I can see where the kind of the key hitting points are. So the report was looking at the state of mobile marketing as it is in 2021, and I'm going to throw out some of the key numbers and findings from that. And I do have the whole 55-page report by App Annie on my blog as well. Again, nicholasdettmann.blogspot.com. So head on over and check it out. So here are just a couple of the highlights from that report. So in 2020, there were 218 billion app downloads, which was a 7% growth from year over year. There was $153 billion was spent in the App Store, which was a 20% growth. One of the first times in history, there was more times that were users spent on mobile than they did watching television. So 4.2 hours daily time spent per user on mobile, which is a 20% growth, or maybe about a half hour longer than what people watched on television. That's pretty significant. Again, that goes back to how people are going to mobile, and streaming is certainly another area that we have seen over the last several months really kick into high gear. Yeah, so the total actually percentage here is Americans spent 8% more time on mobile than watching live TV each day in 2020. That's pretty remarkable, and really kind of defines where we're at society-wise and what we need to, as marketers, need to consider. Gen X and baby boomers spent 30% more time on mobile in 2020. Some of the more popular apps among Gen Z people, those were people born between 1997 and 2012. Snapchat, Twitch, TikTok, Roblox, and Spotify were the most popular apps in 2020 among those born in 1997 to 2012. So for quick math here, so that would be your adolescence, maybe. So someone who's 9 years old to early 20s. Yeah, if I'm doing my math right there. For the popular apps among millennials, which is defined as the people born between 1981 and 1996. So these are people in mid-20s into their late 30s. Those popular apps are Discard, LinkedIn, PayPal, Pandora Music, and Amazon Music. And then popular apps among Gen X and baby boomers, and those are defined as people born between 1965 and 1980 and 1946 to 1964 respectively, are Ring Always Home, Nextdoor, The Weather Channel, Kindle, and Color Notepads Notes. And a couple of last key points here that I found and that I thought was intriguing from this report. Mobile fuels about 45% more financial engagement, and TikTok is on track to have 1.2 billion active users by the end of 2021. Like I mentioned in my previous podcast, TikTok is the fastest growing app I think maybe any of us have ever seen. Certainly not since the days where really Facebook became a mobile app. So TikTok continues to be popular, and it is growing and growing quickly. So again, the full report, all 55 pages of it, is on my blog at nicholasdettmann.blogspot.com. So that'll wrap it up for today's on my podcast. Thanks again for everybody for joining today and giving it a listen. By all means, if you do like what you're listening to, tell your friends, family, relatives, colleagues, anybody you pass on the street about the blog. Certainly would appreciate your feedback if you're liking it, and would appreciate you letting other people know about it. So we'll do it for this week. Thank you again for listening, and again, subscribe to my blog to get daily updates at nicholasdettmann.blogspot.com. Until next time, we'll be able to talk to you. Bye.